Good morning from Philadelphia. Brock Purdy has now authored 4 fourth quarter game-winning drives in the postseason. That is the 5th most in NFL history. He's only played in 7 postseason games.
Epic stuff. Out of Philadelphia, made it safely, ready for coverage on a very short week. So we've got to turn things around quickly. We've got to react to this George Kittle situation because it obviously impacts the 49ers in both the short term and the long term. They had just given him an extension through the 2029 season. He is a pillar of this football team. Let's leave it up to Christian McCaffrey to illustrate the effect in the immediate aftermath of the news that George Kittle tore his Achilles.
It's hard to do, man. This team has carried the character of George Kittle throughout the entire year, and since I got traded here, he's the heart and soul of this team, and so it's a tough loss, man. When he's not playing, it means a lot, but he's somebody that, you know, even going through something that he had to go through and us finding a way to finish, he's the first guy in the locker room smiling, bumping music, happy for his teammates. And when you lose a leader like that, you never really lose him because his presence is still in this locker room. His energy is still here, and he's the leader and heart and soul of this team. And so we're praying for him, love him, and we're going to play for him the rest of the way.
And, you know, it's thematic. The 49ers have lost Nick Bosa. They've lost Fred Warner. Warner, he might be coming back maybe as soon as this week. We'll see. But they've lost so much this season out of the foundational pillar category of this team. You know, when I put up the roster and you see the yellow highlights, well, we'll look at it in a little bit. But normally when you lose the load-bearing walls of a building, and the 49ers have definitely used these superstar veterans as structural support in a roster reset year, normally the building comes crashing down. But this year, the building has not come crashing down despite the fact that the 49ers have lost the foundational pillars. And I think Christian McCaffrey very concisely explained why, because the 49ers, they have carried the spirit of George Kittle with them in each and every one of them. He has a certain attitude about not just the game of football, but about life. It's infectiously positive. He has a certain standard to which he works that has permeated the rest of the roster for the 49ers. And that has allowed San Francisco to continue marching on despite losing not only George Kittle, but despite losing all these other guys, because they have taken the leadership DNA of these players and they have allowed it to seep into the rest of the roster. You see these rookies developing right now. CJ West and Alfred Collins. This is a really, really good stat for you guys. And I think it's going to help illustrate why the 49ers are still alive right now. Just a small piece of why they're still alive right now, and why there should be major optimism for this roster heading into year 2 of this cycle in 2026. They should get only better. The Eagles had 19 carries for 85 yards, which is 4.5 yards per carry, when CJ West, the 49ers rookie defensive tackle, big number 9, was not on the field. When West was on the field, the Eagles went from 4.5 yards per carry to 3.2 yards per carry. When West and Alfred Collins, so the 2 rookie defensive tackles from this 2025 draft class, were both on the field, it went down to 2.9 yards per carry. This is from Nick Wagoner. Does a great job covering the 49ers for ESPN. So no West, 4.5 per carry. Yes, West, 3.2 yards per carry. West and Collins, the future of the 49ers interior defensive line, Philadelphia and Saquon Barkley, down to 2.9 yards per carry. At the start of this season, CJ West and Alfred Collins were not nearly this good, but they have come to work every day chopping wood every single day. They haven't stopped chopping wood, and it's now at the point where the 49ers get their 3rd game against the Seattle Seahawks. Their 2nd in 3 weeks against the Seattle Seahawks, again with everything on the line, and they're going to have blossoming defensive tackles in Alfred Collins and CJ West. How does this all tie back to George Kittle? Well, Alfred Collins and CJ West have been watching George Kittle work every single day. They had watched Bosa work every single day prior to his injury in week 3. Same thing with Fred Warner. They've been watching the standard bearers of this team, and that includes Christian McCaffrey, work. They've been watching diligence. They've been watching patience. They've been watching optimism. I mean, this is the opposite of a loser mentality, right? The 49ers have a Hall of Fame mentality because they have future Hall of Fame players who are imparting their wisdom on this team. So even though George Kittle is hurt, his impact is still going to be felt in that building. Now, we obviously have to talk about the future as well. They're not going to have Kittle in the short term. I get it. Achilles injury, what is it going to be, 9 to 12 months? So if you fast forward, he might not be back until midway through the 2026 season. There's no way to know. He has to undergo surgery. The recovery process has to start. George Kittle is a special athlete, so maybe things moving along a little bit more quickly. But right now, we put a timetable on when exactly Kittle's going to be back. We have to assume that the 49ers are going to try to bolster the tight end position in the offseason. Somebody like David Njoku is going to be a free agent of the Cleveland Browns right now. Somebody like Dallas Goedert, who scored against the 49ers yesterday, he's slated to be a free agent as well. There are going to be a crop of tight ends. I believe that Isaiah Likely will also be available this offseason. So you could talk about all these names, and we're going to have to wait to see how March actually ends up panning out because teams can re-sign their guys right now. Remember that the 49ers have Jake Tonjes on their team right now. And remember that George Kittle got hurt in week 1 after scoring that opening touchdown against Seattle. And Tonjes came in, and Tonjes began making a name for himself right away. In games that the 49ers have been able to game plan around Tonjes all week, right, when they've known that Kittle's not going to be available, Tonjes has generally turned into a very, very reliable receiving option. In the problem without Kittle has been the run game for the 49ers. Yesterday included. Now, they weren't running the ball even with Kittle in there, but that's a testament to the strength of the Philadelphia Eagles defense. But the 49ers offense splits somewhere in the 20s when Kittle has not been available in run offense EPA, and they've been in the top 10 when Kittle has been available. That's the big delta. That's what you really lose. You lose, I think, the ability to be a truly balanced, ferocious unit on the ground, especially when you're facing some of the best defenses in football. And they're going to be facing the very best defense in football again in the Seattle Seahawks on Saturday. But I think that it just underscores the larger term project for the 49ers. You entered 2025 assuming that you get a lot more out of Ricky Pearsall. I'm probably assuming you'd get a lot more, or hoping you'd get a lot more out of Brandon Ayuk. And you've gotten not a lot from either of those two guys. Nothing from Brandon Ayuk. And yeah, you've gotten some production from Pearsall. It's been valuable. Let's not undersell how important Ricky Pearsall was for the 49ers to beat the Seahawks in week 1. Let's not undersell how important he was to beat the Chicago Bears. I mean, there have been real contributions from Ricky Pearsall this season, and maybe he's back this weekend. I just don't know. Maybe he's back against the Seahawks on Saturday, and maybe that can help tip the scales in the 49ers' favor. But in the larger picture, especially after what you saw on the field yesterday with neither Ayuk nor Pearsall nor George Kittle available, the 49ers need more separators on the outside. They will be heavily involved on the wide receiver market this offseason, whether it be through the draft avenue or the free agent avenue. They need to build an offense that can allow Brock Purdy to deliver the most gaudy numbers in the league, because Purdy is the best quarterback in the NFL. Here's a quick little side note. Flip in any quarterback out of all of the playoff guys this year into the 49ers position yesterday. Have him replace Brock Purdy yesterday, and it likely would have been lost. That's how good the performance from Purdy was. He had to walk an absolute tightrope. Even if you try to say that Josh Allen would have done better, you're probably wrong, because Josh Allen got a chance to play the Philadelphia Eagles just a couple weeks ago at home with a team that was much healthier than the 49ers, with a much more robust supporting cast, and Allen managed only 12 points. He lost 13-12 to Philadelphia. So what Purdy did yesterday was MVP level, sensational stuff. There wasn't room to work with downfield. The 49ers needed to muster all the tricks out of the the bag, Kyle Shanahan's bag, that included the jet sweep, toss back the Jawan Jennings touchdown pass to Christian McCaffrey. They pulled out all the stops. Purdy threw with insane precision downfield. Yes, he made 2 mistakes with those 2 interceptions, but it was impossible to not make a mistake given the tightrope that he had to walk. It was a reminder that the 49ers, to be sustainably good moving forward into 2026 and beyond, are going to have to stock up with separators on the outside. That was going to be true with or without George Kittle entering the 2026 season. The Kittle absence, the potential absence to start 2026, and just the Kittle rehab over the course of the offseason in general probably necessitates the 49ers at least taking a look at that tight end market to see if they have to get a stopgap player, because that is an important part of this offense, as I mentioned, for the run game. They need somebody who can block. That's really important, because what Kyle Shanahan is trying to do at the line of scrimmage is sell the option of a run or the pass, because he's trying to compromise the defensive numbers and the defensive leverage. So if he wants guys to be further back on their heels, he'll soften them up with the run game, right? If he wants guys to be on, you do what the defense is not expecting. In order to out-leverage a defense, you have to have success in both realms of offensive football. You have to have success running the football, and you have to have success passing the football. That's when defenses are put into this middle mush zone of uncertainty, and that's when Kyle Shanahan can have a lot of fun. Without George Kittle, who's one of the most adaptable pieces in the game because he can block like an offensive tackle and he can catch the ball like a wide receiver, it becomes much, much harder to do that. Yes, the 49ers' Super Bowl chances, their chances to beat the Seattle Seahawks, lowered even further with the George Kittle injury. There's no way around it, but they have to find a way to leverage that pass run balanced option, the threat of both moving forward into 2026, and how they build this roster is, still going to rely in large part on that adaptability that comes from the tight end position. They're going to get separators. They're going to be on the market for receivers. We're going to talk about that before the draft. We're going to talk a lot about that ahead of free agency. That is an absolute given, because Purdy was working with very precious little yesterday. That's going to happen. We'll see how the 49ers make it work against the Seahawks. Getting Ricky Pearsall back would be really nice. But tight end, even if George Kittle was lined up in that group of receivers often, and you could bunch together in some passing concepts, it's the adaptability of George Kittle and the ability to run block that truly separates him. And that's why tight end technically is a separate bucket from the wide receiver room that the 49ers are going to have to attack this offseason. So we'll get the timetable on Kittle soon enough. He's going to have to undergo surgery. And then we'll talk about when they expect him back, and we'll talk about offseason plans in order to pick up some of the slack. It's probably not going to be a high-budget tight end option that the 49ers bring in. Somebody like David Njoku is 29 years old, will probably make a decent amount of money, but if it's somebody that breaks the bank, I don't think that the 49ers are going to go in that direction, because Kittle will be back. Like Kyle Juszczyk said, and George Kittle told him this in the locker room yesterday. He's like, Juszczyk came into the locker room and he was like almost in tears after George had torn his Achilles. And George said, dude, I'm not dead. Like, cheer up a little bit. Like, I'm still alive. I'm still here. Go and win the football game. And Kyle Juszczyk actually told me that was a very, very important message to hear from George. The 49ers story of resilience this year goes back all the way to overcoming the Nick Bosa injury in week 3. But the one that they still won that game, even after Bosa got hurt against the Arizona Cardinals, the 49ers found a way to dig out, what was it, a 16-15 or an 18-17 win. It was a really, really ugly score. Where the 49ers got tripped up, at least rarely, was in their game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers after Fred Warner got hurt. And they folded. They lost in ugly fashion. The defense was not ready to stop a nosebleed after Fred Warner went down. And Trent Williams, I mean, was really, really honest about this in my article, which is up on the San Francisco Standard. This is something I put a lot of work into. I'm operating on absolutely zero sleep right now. Just flew from Philadelphia and said, hey, I got to do a live, but I was working on this last night. If you want the best written coverage of the 49ers, this is for you. We'll see if Mike can maybe toss this into the description of the video. But I want to show you the Trent Williams quote. And here you could see the George Kittle picture. But Trent talked about losing another one of our brothers today, the heart and soul of this team. But instead of guys feeling sorry for us and feeling sorry for him, we decided we were going to play for him and try to pull it out for him. When Fred went down in Tampa, I don't think we responded well during the game. Well, after the game, we obviously came together. Maybe we learned from that and handled this situation better. So the 49ers could have very easily gone in the tank yesterday after George went down. And maybe it was heading in that direction. He went down a few minutes before halftime. And like I said, guys like Juszczyk were very emotional heading into the locker room, especially when they saw George sitting there with a torn Achilles. But the spirit of George Kittle was reinstilled into the conscience of his team when they saw George himself having a good time in that locker room. We could talk about tequila and all we want, said now by Jed York, the 49ers owner. I think that's emblematic of George Kittle. I think it's awesome. I think it's also a very Eddie DeBartolo Jr.-like thing to do for a player. If he wants tequila, he's fought his ass off for you ever since 2017 for nearly a decade. He just tore his Achilles. He's an absolute warrior. Yeah, he should get his bottle of tequila after tearing his Achilles in the locker room. But anyway, it's a great example of Kittle just trying to make the best of the moment, maintaining optimism throughout the moment. And his demeanor when the 49ers came into the locker room yesterday lifted the entire team. You heard it from guys like Christian McCaffrey. I just played the clip. I could play it again because it's such a strong message that Christian McCaffrey sent. You heard it from Trent Williams. You heard it from Kyle Juszczyk. George Kittle set the 49ers right mentally at halftime after he has been setting the 49ers right mentally for nearly a decade. These rookies had already been feeding off of the example that George Kittle has brought to the table. That's why this team is 13-5 right now, despite all of these injuries. And then the veterans, despite grieving the loss of George Kittle's Achilles for a few minutes there, the veterans snapped back to attention and they went out and they beat the Philadelphia Eagles. I would say they kicked the Eagles' ass in the second half. I mean, they took it to Philadelphia in the second half. The Eagles scored 2 field goals after halftime? Yeah, they scored 2 field goals after halftime. And the defense kicked it into a new gear for the 49ers. You know, I just flew out of Philadelphia. Everybody, including my Lyft driver, wants the offensive coordinator fired. The Lyft driver in Philadelphia, massive Eagles fan, shout out to him, Mark, said, yeah, Brock Purdy on this Eagles team would look really good. He's a lot better than Jalen Hurts. Imagine Eagles fans saying that a year ago on their Super Bowl run after the 49ers limped their way to a 6-11 finish. You know, every single Philadelphia fan that I talked to in person, and those people are much more respectable than the people online, I'll have to say that. But every single Eagles fan that I talked to in Philadelphia would love for Kyle Shanahan to be the coach and the offensive coordinator, and for Brock Purdy to be the quarterback of the Eagles instead of Nick Sirianni, Kevin Patullo, and Jalen Hurts. I mean, that's what happens when you have better players and better coaches. Other teams want them, but the 49ers aren't going to give these guys up anytime soon. Anyway, the 49ers took it to that Eagles team in the second half, even despite having a much less known roster, to put it nicely. The Eagles, that was the top paid offense, the most expensive offense in NFL history, that the 49ers defense held to a couple field goals after halftime. And The 49ers offense was working against an elite defense. It was still a Super Bowl championship defense, but Purdy, even without George Kittle out there, was able to get it done. And now the challenge only intensifies as the 49ers get ready to play the Seattle Seahawks on Saturday. It is the absolute hardest path for San Francisco. I'm taking this link right here. I'm going to put it into the comments section. Those of you who are watching, if you want to go check out the San Francisco Standard, sign up for the Standard for the best 49ers coverage that there is, you can go ahead and do that. There's the link. This is something I swear, I didn't sleep because of this article. And we went heavy into the emotions in that 49ers locker room. Of course, the speech from Kyle Shanahan, the comparisons to Joe Montana ball. That's what Brock Purdy's doing right now. He is playing at such a high level. The stat that I opened this video with should tell you everything. He has authored 4 game-winning playoff drives. He is just 26 years old. He already ranks number 5 in NFL history when it comes to the amount of game-winning playoff drives authored. There is absolutely no question that Brock Purdy is an elite quarterback at the top of the league. You can go argue amongst yourselves if you really want to put a number on it, but it's not worse than 3 in this NFL. Every single statistic from the regular season, and that includes stuff that goes back to Purdy's rookie year in 2022, so we have a larger sample size, has him as the most efficient quarterback in football. You can argue that what a quarterback accomplishes on a team-wide level in the playoffs should move people up or down in rank, and I get it, but Purdy's playoff record has been spectacular. The 49ers have only lost 2 games that Purdy has started in the postseason. One, he blew up his UCL, the ligament in his elbow on the first drive, so he finished the game without being able to throw up. And the other, he left the field 3 times in the fourth quarter or overtime with the 49ers either ahead or with the game tied against the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. The point is that the 49ers have not lost a playoff game because of Brock Purdy. In fact, every single time that he's been available in the NFC playoffs, they have won. And then there was that one time in the Super Bowl where he outplayed Patrick Mahomes, but it most certainly wasn't his fault that they lost the game. Every single bit of data shows that the 49ers have a guy at the very top of the NFL. Like, he is there. There's a Mount Rushmore of the best quarterbacks right now. Brock Purdy is unquestionably on it. If you argue that he's number 1 in the league, you wouldn't be wrong. You couldn't be proven wrong because all the data agrees with you. A lot of that, though, I get it is subjective, and people are going to look at this subjectively, but there's no way you're keeping him out of the top 4, the Mount Rushmore of the top quarterbacks in the NFL right now. Some of what the 49ers were able to do yesterday was borderline insane because of the lack of room that Brock Purdy had throwing the football. He was dealing with such small windows that even Kevin Burkhardt, the announcer, seemed fooled a few times. And I think that Tom Brady, who's a quarterback used to throwing into tight windows, I mean, Brock Purdy, Tom Brady, obviously, is the master of sitting up and carving up a defense, even if he didn't have his full arsenal. There were some years in New England where the receiving core was rough. But there was a throw to Kyle Juszczyk before the touchdown, the game-winning touchdown to Christian McCaffrey, where it was wild because the throw went behind Juszczyk, and Burkhardt was like, whoa, the throw's behind him. I can tell you, I was sitting at that game. That's exactly where the throw had to be, or else it would have been intercepted or incomplete. Probably intercepted. So Purdy was intentionally throwing off of the ideal spot against air to create separation with his own throwing angle that didn't exist with the route against the defense. He had to throw to his fullback 4 times yesterday. Gives you an idea of where the 49ers were in terms of separation as an offense. And that one throw to Kyle Juszczyk that had to be behind Kyle Juszczyk intentionally, it was emblematic of so many other completions in this game that had to be put in unorthodox spots so that the catch could be made against an Eagles defense. You know, the Eagles defense is historically good against in-breaking routes. I have Brock Purdy's throwing chart. I believe I put it in here. Maybe I didn't. No, it's going to have to be in my next piece on the San Francisco Standard. I'm going to get the throwing chart out right now, though, because Purdy decided to challenge Philadelphia's greatest defensive strength, which was those in-breaking routes. And the Eagles had given up only a 52% completion percentage on those in-breakers over the course of the Fangio era. Vic Fangio, their defensive coordinator, the former DC of the 49ers under Jim Harbaugh, known as Lord Fangio, is extremely proficient, especially with the personnel that he has, scheming up a defense that can take away the in-breaking part of the field. When you have a Brandon Ayuk, when you have a Ricky Pearsall, you have the ability to run more out-breaking routes because those guys can take advantage of the full width of the field with their quickness and their separation ability. When you don't have that, you're going to have to run more in-breakers. You can't use the sideline. You have to get that sideline away because the defense is going to use that sideline as extra tackler. Generating yards after the catch is going to be extremely important when you don't have the type of separators that you need to run an offense that is breaking out toward the perimeter. Purdy can obviously make those throws to the perimeter. We've seen him make them, including yesterday. He made a few on out-breaking routes, but it was mainly an in-breaking route day for San Francisco. It turns out that, as I said, the Philadelphia Eagles under Vic Fangio over the past 2 seasons with their Super Bowl champion defense had allowed only a 52% conversion rate on those in-breaking throws. But Brock Purdy attempted 17 of those passes on in-breaking routes, and he completed 12 of them for 208 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Eagles had never given that kind of production under Vic Fangio to a quarterback trying to throw in-breakers. And what that tells you, especially since the 49ers didn't have a run game yesterday, that tells you that Purdy was throwing the ball with extreme precision on the in-breaking routes that won this game. It took precision and it took aggressiveness. You're not winning this game and you're not completing the passes that you see up there on this screen without taking big-time chances and having the big-time accuracy and the big-time poise to execute on those chances. Yes, twice Brock Purdy failed, and those, one of them was an outbreaker, but one of them was a play where the offensive line was in his lap and it was first down. It just wasn't the right risk-reward calculus. The second one, you know, I would argue that the risk-reward calculus on both of the interceptions needed to be modified, but the second one was just a really, really tough throw that would have had to get over the initial coverage and in front of the second coverage. Was it tougher than the one right after the George Kittle Achilles? We can argue that forever, but that was another inbreaker. And that was the throw that I really want to illustrate today. In retrospect, we probably should have known that the 49ers were on a mission to win this game when on the very first play after George Kittle tore his Achilles, Purdy just in cold-blooded fashion dropped back and found Juwan Jennings on an inbreaker that ended up going 45 yards. He had it over Zach Bond, who's a good linebacker, had a drop in front of the safety. It was perfectly layered, and Juwan Jennings caught it in stride. I mean, Purdy basically runs up with a pillow in his hand. Imagine, you know, there being a butler or some kind of delivery man on the football field that sprints 20 yards downfield holding the softest pillow that you could find at Mancini's Sleep World. I just got a nice pillow there. They didn't pay me to say that, but I got a nice pillow. I was really, really happy with it. Think about somebody running up with a really soft pillow and handing it to Juwan Jennings. I mean, that's how that football landed on Juwan Jennings' hands. Purdy throws pillows. He throws these footballs that are immensely catchable. They get to the spot at the right time, and He did it right after, like literally the play after George Kittle tore his Achilles. So we could talk about the 49ers collapsing back in Tampa Bay after Fred Warner got hurt. And they made so many mistakes on both sides of the ball in that football game. That was not the case this time against the Philadelphia Eagles. Right away, 45 yards, Purdy to Jennings on one of those inbreakers. You know, I'm trying to find on here which pass exactly that was. It was probably one of these two. You could see a completion is green. Jennings made the catch, and then he sprinted over this way for the 45-yard gain that I thought really put the 49ers in position to take this game to distance and beat the Philadelphia Eagles. We can't do a show without talking about the 49ers defense and Eric Kendricks. The 49ers' three leading tacklers in this game were not in their defensive rotation for the vast majority of this season. In fact, two of them weren't even on the team for the vast majority of this season. Garrett Wallow, the linebacker. I know a lot of you in the comments section were talking trash about Garrett Wallow this last week. Well, I hope you retract it now. He's accepting apologies. Led the 49ers with 11 tackles. Had a nice pass breakup as well on Saquon Barkley, I believe. That was a nice play from Garrett Wallow, who wears the number 49. He had 11 tackles. Eric Kendricks, fresh from Fresno. Well, I mean, he's 33 years old now, so it's been a while since he was at Hoover High School in Fresno. But Eric Kendricks, 10 tackles. And then Marquise Siegel. I mean, if we want to talk about the attitude of this 49ers team, the perseverance and how it's built by the veterans and the standard is set by the veterans, and then that trickles down or is imprinted on the rookies. How about the example of Marquise Siegel? Here's a guy who started this year in the first string safety job. Rookie draft pick out of Kansas State. Very good athlete. Best out of all safeties in the broad jump. So he starts for the 49ers to begin the year, but he gives up a ton in coverage, and the 49ers bench him. They go to more of a veteran approach with Jair Brown at one of the safety positions, and then Malik Mustafa comes back from the ACL tear. He's at the other position. So Marquise Siegel, yeah, he's been in on special teams, but his defensive job taken away from him for a couple months, like maybe 3 months. It's been since the very early portion of the year, right? We haven't seen Marquise Siegel at safety. Jair Brown pulls his hamstring against the Eagles. The 49ers dabble with Jason Pinnock in there a little bit, but they'd rather just keep Jason Pinnock at the big nickel position. They don't want to mess with too many things. They're like, all right, Siegel, it's your time. Let's see how you've treated your 3 months out of a job. Let's see if you've maintained optimism. Let's see if you've maintained diligence. Let's see if you've still been studying your playbook. Let's see if you've still been, on top of the details that normally starters are on top of, but sometimes I would say on other teams, guys who are backups, there's a big drop off. That's why teams who lose this many players to injury typically aren't very good, because you lose that attention to detail when you go from starter to reserve. Siegel came in there and had 8 tackles for the 49ers, third on the team, an awesome open field tackle of Devontae Smith that I don't think that Jair Brown is making. And Jair Brown had a really good tackle of his own on Smith earlier in the game, but this was a whole new challenge. He basically had Smith as a sitting duck out in the flat on his tackle. This time, Smith was on his toes. He wasn't on his heels, and Marquise Siegel was able to wrap him up. But 8 quality tackles, no missed tackles, not enough blown in the pass game to be targeted in the pass game. That's really, really important. That's what's going to be able to keep Marquise Siegel on the field. And in general, an infusion of good play into the 49ers defense that can confidently make them think that they're going to have a different, better defense in this matchup against Seattle than they did back in week 18. Starting Kendricks, starting Wallow, starting Siegel, Upton Stout. I mean, Upton Stout might be the best player on this defense. You know, the 49ers did something interesting with Deommodore Lenoir. He almost always plays left cornerback for the 49ers. He had played all but one snap on that one side this season. Yesterday, he was 35 snaps on the left, 34 snaps on the right. It wasn't because he was trailing A.J. Brown around. It was because Deommodore Lenoir and the 49ers had determined that Jalen Hurts was not as comfortable throwing to that right cornerback's side, so to the left side. They said Jalen Hurts is just more comfortable throwing to a certain half of the field. So they want to mess with Jalen a little bit. They wanted to park Lenore out on one side and see if Jalen Hurts would be a little screwed up by it. And I think it ended up working. So it was a team effort from this defense, but team efforts are only sums of individual parts, right? Like you've got to have those individual performances to make it work. And the 49ers certainly did. I talked about West. I talked about Collins, Kendricks, Wallow, Stout, Lenore, Siegel. Staffa had a big hit on Devontae Smith there at the end of the game. And the ringleader of everything here is Eric Kendricks, who's at that Mike linebacker position. If we're going to be talking about a Fred Warner return, well, Kendricks is the one doing the most work to build a bridge back to it since he's at that Mike spot. This is awesome insight from Kyle Shanahan on Eric Kendricks.
How well they were prepared. Just anytime you put a Mike linebacker in there and he's got to dictate the whole defense by getting the D-line set up, the coverages and everything. I thought Eric was just as expected. I mean, I've gone against Eric so much in my life, and I remember saying at the beginning of the week on Wednesday and to the whole team, I was like, guys, I don't really know Eric that well, but I've been going against him on the silent tape forever, and that's why I feel like I do know him. And from going against him, I promise you guys, this guy's gonna be ready. That was the vibe we've always had playing against him our whole career, and that's how he handled this whole week. And he looked kind of like what I've seen going against him my whole career. He looked like that tonight, just how he drops in the hooks. I think he's always a problem for quarterbacks. Looked like he knocked that ball down at the end. And then Garrett, too. Garrett was huge. I haven't gone against Garrett very much, but since he got here and played on our teams to start, he opted in a linebacker last week. I don't think they just stepped up and got through the game. I think they played at a high level, so it was really cool.
Well, isn't that awesome? Kyle Shanahan saying, I didn't know Kendricks as a person, but I feel that I've known him because I've been playing against him, competing against him on the silent tape for years. Eric Kendricks, an all-pro from Minnesota back in 2019. And Kyle Shanahan is sitting there for hours, poring over film, figuring out how to manipulate linebackers, figuring out how to attack a defense. And so many of the games that the 49ers played against either the Minnesota Vikings or wherever else Eric Kendricks was, they faced him in 2024 when he was with the Dallas Cowboys. Kyle Shanahan, game respect game. And Kyle Shanahan was watching Kendricks, that trademarked hair, a little like Troy Polamalu, right? But somebody was talking about Head and Shoulders in the comments section. He needs to become a spokesman, just like Troy Polamalu was. But Kendricks was there all the time. Shanahan's just sitting in his office watching the silent tape, hours and hours, hundreds, if not thousands of reps. And on so many of them, he sees Eric Kendricks creating problems, doing the right thing, communicating as a Mike linebacker. And that's why the 49ers initially wanted this guy to replace Dre Greenlaw in 2024. Unfortunately, Kendricks chose to follow his old coach as a defensive coordinator, with Mike Zimmer, with the Dallas Cowboys instead. Unfortunately, the 49ers had to go to their backup plan with Devondre Campbell. We all know how that just completely blew up when Campbell quit on the team in December of 2024. Would things have been much different in 2024 with Eric Kendricks there instead of Devondre Campbell? Perhaps. But there was also a lot else wrong with that team in 2024. They were exhausted. They were tired. This 2025 team came to work ready to put on a real fight, even despite all the diversity. And then fittingly, in a full circle moment, Eric Kendricks signed with the 49ers on November 26th. Dropped his ego at the door. He's talked about this a lot. The 49ers didn't know exactly where they'd have a spot for him. And they said, if you're willing to learn the will, if you're willing to learn the Sam linebacker position, not just the Mike, not just the middle linebacker position, if you're willing to learn all these positions, come and join our team. You're going to have a chance to play. We don't know where the next injury is going to be. We can't promise you Mike linebacker. And Kendricks, he would knock on KJ Wright's door early in the morning. That's the assistant linebackers coach for the 49ers. He'd knock on KJ Wright's door late at night because these guys are working around the clock. I think a lot more respect needs to be put into how many hours the 49ers are putting in. He would be in that office comparing his old playbooks to his new playbooks his new playbook. There's one of them for the 49ers. And he learned 3 positions over the course of 5 or 6 weeks. Started at the Sam for the 49ers. Then that Mike opening popped up when Tatum Bethune got hurt. And now Eric Kendricks is starting there. And you know who else is knocking on the door to return to the Mike linebacker position? It is Fred Warner. And we're going to have plenty of updates on Fred Warner over the course of this week. Maybe if Fred comes back, then you move, because of all the diligence and preparation from Kendricks, you can move him to the weak side spot. Maybe you like Garrett Wallow on the weak side spot and Eric becomes a backup, or he splits duty with Fred Warner at that Mike linebacker position with the radio and the helmet. It's better to have options than it is to be out of options. And entering this game against the Eagles, it appeared that the 49ers were dead out of options at linebacker. People were really fearing Garrett Wallow at the weak side spot. There was reserved optimism that Kendricks would be addition by subtraction because Tatum Bethune had struggled, especially since the tackling fell off as of late for Tatum Bethune. And, well, I mean, it was definitely addition by subtraction based on what we saw on that field. I think we got a good quote from Eric Kendricks last night. Let's see if any of this is available. Yeah, we got a couple good ones from Eric Kendricks. Let's go ahead and watch.
I haven't won in Philly in a while, so it feels good for the soul. Obviously, under the circumstances, me and Garrett, gotta give a shout out to Garrett Wallow. He was excellent in the communication. I always judge other linebackers based on when things are super thick out, and things aren't going our way, how well you're able to communicate and how well you're able to stay calm. And he checked those boxes. So shout out to him. That was a big moment for both of us, just to come in and obviously it's been next man up kind of mentality this whole year with unfortunately with all the injuries, and I'm just happy that we can come through for everybody.
One more from Eric Kendricks, because he his press conference I thought was so insightful yesterday.
KJ Wright, I've been in kind of just knocking on his meeting door, getting extra time with him since I got here. So whether it's super early in the morning or after meetings, I feel like he's got me prepared. We went through a bunch of situations, watched a bunch of film together. He's got stamina as a coach. So, obviously we know what kind of player he was. But, it's been nice to, bounce my old playbook off him and kind of compare it to this new one and get the similarities and the differences, because that's kind of like, this is my, I think, 4th defense in a row. So it's like, you have to be able to compare and contrast and, just get rid of the stuff that doesn't matter and kind of lock in on the new concepts. So I feel like we got a pretty good grasp of that pretty early.
Look at his shirt, by the way, before I take down this picture. Eric Kendricks, he said he got this from a thrift store in Japan. I don't need your attitude. I have my own. Nice shirt. And he told us how much it cost in yen, and he even converted the price to US dollars. I forgot exactly how much he said, but Eric Kendricks does not need your attitude. He has his own. And he brought some attitude to that 49ers linebacker position that was huge yesterday. Now, this is funny. We got Lombardi herself just sent this one to me. This is from our SF 49ers. He found something online. The Seahawks are very, very concerned about the 49ers fans taking over their stadium again. Week 1 was rather embarrassing for Seattle because they have so prided themselves on being the best fan base. I put it in quotes, the best fan base. They pipe in noise in Seattle, or they may not pipe in noise, but they cheat in Seattle because the stadium reverberates the noise parabolically down from the overhang. But the Seahawks are rather notorious for liking to pat themselves on the back. They even fly a flag that says 12 as if they're part of the team. It's the only fan base that I see where they have the number 12 on jerseys and it says fan on the back instead of a player. It's really quite ridiculous. It's a little cute that they think that they're so involved in the outcome of the game. But anyway, week 1 was a big blow to the egos of the 12s of Seahawks fans, because the 49ers fans literally took over the stadium. I mean, there are photos of 70% red on one side. And then in their desperation, you had, some of the Seahawks social media accounts tried to be like, no, it actually looks like this. And they try to like whole stadium. It's like, dude, this is your home stadium. The fact that even one half of it would be 70% 49ers fans, one section of it would be 70% 49ers fans. You set this standard yourself by wearing a jersey with the number 12 on it. It should be 3% 49ers fans at most in the stadium. So the Seahawks have taken this big reputational hit as fans. Like it's when there's that much red in a stadium and that's your main rival, the 49ers, it's just not good. So what they did is they sent out an email to certain season ticket holders who are in the habit of reselling their seats. And the email reads, our records indicate that your seats for the upcoming divisional playoff round game against the 49ers are currently posted for resale. So they have a way of tracking this now. The digital footprint, scary stuff. As communicated before the 2025 season, 2026 renewal eligibility may be impacted if it is determined that your season tickets, including any playoff games, were used primarily for resale purposes. So here are the Seahawks threatening to take away season tickets if you exercise your right to sell the tickets that you've bought. That's how desperate they are to keep 49ers fans out of the stadium. The email includes a directive to those who received it. To avoid any impact to your renewal eligibility, we ask that you remove your resale listing and ensure your tickets are used by another, look at this, look how self-aggrandizing this is, another 12. They have a number. They call themselves 12s. So, I don't know. I'm sure that there's some fine print on the tickets when you buy it that allow the Seahawks to do this. But typically in a free country in America, you own property that you buy, like your tickets, and then you can go ahead and sell that to somebody else. Like, it's capitalism. It's a free market. But according to the Seattle Seahawks, you can no longer buy any more tickets if you commit the mortal sin of trying to sell them. You can't do that. It's become too much of a problem. They are trying to interfere with the free market. And I think the free market spoke back in week 1 when a huge part of that stadium was red. And I don't think that the Seahawks organization was very happy about that. Yes, it does seem that the 49ers fans are living in their head rent-free. It was a very similar story back in 2021, like related, when the Rams were trying to stop resales. They weren't threatening their season ticket holders, though, but that might be because the Rams don't have season ticket holders. In 2021, even Kelly Stafford got involved and was begging fans not to sell their seats to 49ers fans. And I think they tried to lock out Bay Area zip codes. The problem for the Rams, and this is probably a problem because the 49ers have fans all over the country, all over the world. But for the Rams especially, there are more 49ers fans in LA than there are Rams fans. So if you block out LA area zip codes, it's really hard because then you block out your own fans if you're the Rams. But again, maybe they don't actually have any fans to begin with. So blocking out LA area zip codes may be effective, which is crazy in its own right. The Rams held a watch party at SoFi Stadium for one of their recent games, and it was one of the saddest videos that I had ever seen. It was like, I don't know, 400 people at most, probably even less. If the Rams opened up SoFi Stadium to a 49ers watch party, given the amount of 49ers fans that there are in town, I know the Rams would never open up their stadium to a 49ers watch party, but that thing would probably get pretty full based on what we've seen at actual games when the 49ers have taken on the Rams. Anyway, it would be fun to see that again if there's an NFC championship between San Francisco and LA. As Carlos says, the 49ers are a blue blood franchise. Yes, sir. There definitely are more 49ers fans in LA than Rams fans on the whole. Now, over the years, might that change as the Rams become more reestablished in LA? Sure. But they did themselves a crushing disservice by moving to St. Louis for 20 years. Because LA is the type of market where attention spans are not very long, to put it nicely. And, you know, in LA, people are always flock to the next hottest commodity. While the Rams were gone in the 2000s, before they moved back, which was around 2000, I'm guessing 12 or 2013, maybe a little bit after that, USC football was king in that decade. So LA became a college sports town. Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, at least as far as football went, it was a college sports town. I mean, back in the day, they were a basketball town, right? They were the Lakers city, and they were UCLA men's basketball with John Wooden. There was always a lot going on in LA, and if the attention spans are shorter to begin with there, you can't just leave for a couple decades, come back and expect everybody to be waiting for you. People said, screw this. The Rams, you guys left to St. Louis. Even while you were in LA, you got your asses kicked by the 49ers every single year. There was a time when the 49ers had a 19-game win streak over the 49ers. So once the Rams left to St. Louis, everybody said, well, I'd rather just watch the team that beats up on the Rams. Oh, look, they're in St. Louis now. There's Ken Norton Jr. beating the crap out of the goalpost, out of both goalposts at the old Busch Stadium. It's way cooler to watch the 49ers than the Rams, who are finishing in last place every single year. So, I mean, an entire generation plus of football fans in Southern California walked into 49ers fandom. And I get that some of them probably down there Raiders fans because the Raiders were down there in LA, but then the Raiders moved to Oakland. They were yo-yoing between Oakland and LA, and now they're in Las Vegas. It's tough to maintain a good local regionalized fan base when you're moving as much as the Raiders are. Plus, the Rams down in LA, they moved down to Orange County. They played in Anaheim Stadium when they were still in LA. That also wasn't for all of that. So we can go on a long tangent about the Rams and the 12s up in the Pacific Northwest, but the 49ers have a fan base that dwarfs all of those teams. Tonight, who's ready for the game in about 1 hour? The Texans and the Steelers kicking off at 5:15 Pacific. Houston is favored by 3. That is D'Amico Ryans and a staff, including many people who used to be involved with the 49ers, against Aaron Rodgers. There's a possibility that every single time that we watch Aaron Rodgers play now, it's going to be his last career game at 42 years old. We'll see if he comes back next year or not. But I have Houston winning this football game. I think that the Texans defense, that they're so overring up front. They may have the best pass rush in football. I mean, there are a few teams who are contenders for that. The Seahawks obviously one too. But just as far as pure edge rush, what Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter are able to bring for the Texans is special. They've got linebackers who could fly around. Obviously, Azeez Al-Shire is on that team. And they're also good at the cornerback position with Lassiter and Derek Stingley. This is a good Texans defense. And the Steelers are rather unremarkable defensively and unremarkable offensively. I mean, that was the worst division in the AFC, right? That we saw Pittsburgh win with the missed field goal from the Baltimore Ravens. The Steelers do have the home field advantage. And, you know, you could argue maybe they have a slight quarterback advantage, but Aaron Rodgers has declined. CJ Stroud has played better as this season has gone along. I would expect Houston to win this game and advance And I'll be watching with great interest since it's going to be the only game on tonight. It was a crazy opening weekend. I didn't have a chance to react to Chargers Patriots, but it's not like there was a lot to react to. 16-3, New England over the Chargers. Let's put that stupid debate to rest. Brock Purdy's a lot better than Justin Herbert. 3 points, really? Against the New England Patriots team it's not the Seattle Seahawks defense. It's not anything close. The Patriots are an offensive team. That was a bad defensive performance. Greg Roman probably gone. It's the offensive coordinator under Jim Harbaugh. Herbert continually disappoints, has yet to win a playoff game. Continues to be overrated just because he's tall and has a strong arm. But playing quarterback is about a lot more than that, as Brock Purdy has consistently shown. All right, you guys have homework. It is to go sign up for the San Francisco Standard. The 49ers are on a generational type of run right now, overcoming crazy amounts of adversity. If you go click on this link and sign up, you get extra credit. But no, you get the best 49ers written coverage there is. And also hit the subscribe button on this video right now, because I am going on no sleep, giving you guys extremely in-depth 49ers coverage, going through all these interviews, organizing these shows, working basically 2 jobs, and we are approaching 100,000 real subscribers. We want to be the first 49ers channel to 100,000 real subscribers. So hit that subscribe button right now. We're at 98, 390. And as I refresh, maybe we get up to 391. Come on. I'm not going to let you guys go until it's one more. You guys need to be hitting this button right now. Subscribe button it is. You guys are disappointing me. Nobody's hitting the button right now. I swear I'm refreshing. Okay, finally somebody hit the button. So keep on hitting that subscribe button, and we're going to get to 99,000 and then 100,000 real subscribers. But do check out the San Francisco Standard. This is as in-depth as it gets, covering the 49ers. Oh, we just got 2 more. Awesome. All right, enjoy the game tonight. I'm going to go chill. I'm going to go write an article, another one, but you can read this one that's up on the Standard right now. We'll see you guys later.